Hello, this is Kaolin, and this is the Essence of Transformation, episode number 13. Welcome to it. I hope that you're having a fine day today. And you know that this show is guided by me. The theme of the summer is psychic circles. We will be discussing esotericism, dreams, intuition, tarot cards, grief stories of healing, including the role of the empath in relationships and spirits specifically. Refer to episode number 1 for many spirit photos that have been developed from light. My particular gift happens to be that I see light. It can be suspended in midair, and when I take a photo of it, a person, animals, angels, and other multidimensional beings come out in the photo. I want to thank NOM for their support. This program is for entertainment purposes only. I do single, couples, and group readings at the Hotel Northampton, Fitzwillies, the Tunic, Toasted, and the Mosaic Cafe. And I thank all the staff in each of these restaurants for their lovely service and great sense of humor. I can be reached at 413-282-8538 for scheduling sessions, interviews, and media events. All messages are screened and for business calls only. The website about this subject is www.spiritually-speaking.org. On that site, you will see photos and stories from 2007 to the present. Be sure to leave your comments and your questions below, and I will answer them in episode number 14. Thank you, and let's get started. One of the groups that I'm starting is called Psychic Circles. With this particular group, we are discussing the development of our psychic gifts, what kind of changes one has gone through, understanding that they are very strong intuitions, also dream interpretation, and certain kinds of crises that we've gone through in our lives which have contributed to our gift. We also will be discussing faith. And in the private and group sessions, we're encouraging you to enhance your self-awareness, increase your knowledge of others, encourage your ability to discern, validate your past and present intuitive experiences, discuss your dreams and the messages they bring forward. Take a good look at symbolism, accept growth, appreciate glimpses of astrology and how much it has impacted your life so far. Express any concerns you have about extraterrestrials among us. Psychic Circles serves as a catalyst for healing. You can consider this work therapeutic and entertaining, for as the world changes, we grow and we change. These times are demanding, and sharing experiences can be extremely beneficial amidst so much upheaval. I am an author and a lecturer, a workshop facilitator, national keynote speaker, a member of the National Organization for Women, and I do hope that you will be enjoying this particular broadcast regarding your own esoteric life, your own spirit life, regarding grief, regarding transformation. And I think these are really very fascinating times for us to be living in. A long time ago, actually in 2007, George Allen Williams, who was a firefighter and a Vietnam veteran, had begun to take photography pictures of a sensation he would get after he had had surgery. He had had open heart surgery, actually in 1998. When he came out of the surgery, he would get a sensation to take a photo of a tree or the sky, and then he would just take a camera, any camera. It didn't have to be a new camera. It could be a camera from a tag sale that he got for 25 cents. It didn't matter at all. He would take a camera, take a picture of the sensation he got from the tree or from a cloud, and what would come out in that photo would be angels. Angels, people, statues that don't exist where the photo was taken. This was very interesting for him and for me, and it was a surprise. Prior to that, I had been an astrologer and quite psychic, and my brother had passed in 1993. In 1993, I got extremely cynical. His passing was dreadful. His illness was a total nightmare. And he and I had been best friends. So it was a humongous loss for me. What it did for me was change my perspective on life. I had no interest in psychic energy or astrology. I had absolutely no faith. It had been challenged to the core with his death. And I thought that for me, that whole experience of whether or not faith was valuable or meaningful or realistic was completely challenged. I did not really know how to go about living my life without my younger sibling. And the sibling in my family of origin who brought out the biggest joy in me and happiness. I just loved being his older sister. It was fascinating. It was happy. And so his death at that time was devastating. He was 38 and he had dementia for 2 years before he died. And he and I had often discussed mediumship when we were children. We had discussed it as adolescents. We had a tremendous interest in esoteric astrology. And so we were both pretty well informed about psychic energy. We did believe in healings. We certainly believed in miracles. And as challenging as our lives were, there was a tremendous depth and richness and a nurturing quality in his spiritual philosophy and also in mine. So I was quite devastated by the loss of him. Several weeks into my grief, I would sleep, and then all of a sudden, he would appear in my dream, and we'd be walking together down a street in the neighborhood. He didn't have feet, and oftentimes when spirits come after they've passed, or people, you can refer to them as spirits or people, they really, you notice that they don't have feet because they float. They don't really need feet on the other side. So for me, it was shocking. And he had his best suit on, and he's walking with me, and he's very concerned about me. And it was like a very stark, transparent image of him. He looked healthier and younger than he was, of course, for the few years before he passed. He passed when he was 38. And so he was walking with me and saying to me, "You've really got to work on your faith, because there really is a God. There really is a divine, there is a divinity, and you're absolutely a part of it." So I would wake up kind of thinking, wow, this whole grief experience is ridiculous. To say I was cynical is an understatement. So then a couple of weeks later, I remained very happy in my disbelief of everything. And I really considered grieving a new form of exploration that I had some apathy about, and yet no choice but to experience and to re-experience. And I didn't know how long it would take for it to possibly pass. I had no idea. Then he shows up again, same suit. We're walking along the street. He has no feet. He's floating. And he's going, "Look at this. Look, here I am. Okay, we're not finished yet. Love is eternal. We're going to keep on communicating. You have work to do with your gift." We shared this. We need to continue to share this. Okay. So I wake up and I go, okay, now I have no idea what's going on. I'm confused and also very busy. You know, most of us are very busy when we're grieving. Okay. I was taking care of somebody's child, and Paul said to me, get the Astrameria flowers, get a bouquet of them, because I'm about to show you that faith is manifestation. And I need you to have that bouquet, a fresh bouquet, and put it in a vase. And I'm going to start to show you what it's like on the other side and how the alchemy between the other side and your dimension is really profound, profoundly effective, and can be amazingly healing. So I got long stem Astrameria flowers, totally fresh, and I put them in a vase in the kitchen, and I was deeply still grieving. So I thought, okay, I've kind of lost my mind here a little bit, but that's okay, it's temporary, and he only died a few months ago. That's okay. And so when I was feeling the deep grief after I put the flowers up, and they were fresh and blossoming and beautiful, I went into another room, and that's where I would feel my grief so deeply. Because part of me was wondering, how on earth do you keep up relating with people who have passed away? How do you really do it? So then I would grieve, and then I would cry, and then I'd be quite devastated. So when I went back into the kitchen, the flowers, the entire bouquet of flowers, was completely cut in half. Nobody was there at the time. I did have a roommate, so I tried it later with a roommate to see if the same thing would happen, and it did. And what Paul was showing me was every time I'm in disbelief that there's no faith and no reason to have faith or no communication with the deceased after they go, he was cutting those flowers in half, the bouquet. So eventually I had about 5 or 6 friends over. I told them my dilemma, that I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but I wasn't finished with this experiment. So I got a bouquet with them. They saw they're totally fresh, put them in a beautiful vase, and went with me into the living room. And I sat down and talked about my disbelief and my disinterest in the hereafter and in communication. And they were very sensitive, and they were very cool people and very supportive. So when I was finished, I asked one of them to go in the kitchen and see what condition the bouquet was in. And they were cut completely in half. This is really a moment. This was a very important moment. So we all went in and looked, and everybody was shocked, including me. It was the 3rd or 4th time it happened to me. But now I began to understand, okay, if I have a particular gift, then this is part of it. Witnessing it is part of it. Accepting what I'm observing is part of it. Accepting change is part of it. Accepting the magical aspect of the alchemy is very important. This is something that I will not be able to be dismissive about at all. So I began to do automatic writing, which is taking a loose leaf pad or any kind of copybook and a pen or pencil and just writing and writing and writing. And I'd write to Paul and I'd go, okay, I did it. This is what happened. You're correct. That did happen. Okay, something's going on here that's bigger than I am. So I'm going to accept that this is really a big deal. So he came to me through automatic writing with his own penmanship, as people do. And he had said, good for you, congratulations, step 1. You got through the first step. So, and then eventually he would tell me more and more about certain people, the way that they died, that they were about to die, how they were transitioning. And I paid a lot of attention to it because it seemed like every time that he was expressing something that was going to be the truth, somehow or other, it enhanced my awareness, my knowledge, my acceptance. So I began to have to really pay attention to the fact that time is not linear. It's not linear. And a lot of our time and our awareness of time is dependent upon our belief systems. And therefore, time can have a very magical, mystical, divine quality to it, or it can be enormously restricting and almost seem like a punishment. But sometimes it's really up to you. You have a freedom, you have free will, you can consider what you'd like to, you can allow it to change you, it can change your beliefs. And that's what had happened to me. Because it was an education, he was actually giving me an education. And I would test it, and 90% of the time, whatever he was saying would be true. So, in essence, we continued our communication. And then he told me that George was going to be ill, that his aortic valve was 7 centimeters dilated, and he needed to have a heart surgery. And he told me George would come home with a photo he took at night, and I would see the spirits in it, and that would be the confirmation to let George know. And of course, it's up to George what to do about that. It's up to everybody to make up their own minds about what they do about information any psychic gives you or any medium. No one takes away your free will. It's entirely up to you. So George came home one night, and he put a picture on the table, the exact picture Paul suggested he would. It was taken in the middle of the night, and there were spirits all over a statue, and I saw them very clearly. That was my confirmation that something was up with George's physical body and that he may need serious surgery in order to repair it. So he and I talked, and he had just come from the doctor who gave him a clean bill of health, literally the day before. And I said to him, well, did they give you this particular test? Paul gave me the name of the test. And George said, no, I don't think so. And I said, this is the test that you might want to ask them to give you this particular test. So he called the doctor literally right away and arranged to have that test. George was always a very courageous person. He was a hero. And he remained that until he passed away in 2010. So George went to the doctor the next day. They gave him the particular test that they told him he really didn't need it. Everything's okay. And then they saw that he should have technically really died 3 months before because his aortic valve was 7 centimeters dilated. And they rushed him to the VA Medical Center in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And then that began another whole series of events and crises, open heart surgery within 3 days. And it saved his life, and it saved his life for 13 more years. And he had a great quality of life, and he had a spirit gift for photography, and he had a very full and extremely busy life for those 13 years. My point being, if I had said to Paul, no, I'm going to remain in disbelief about you, I'm not going to pay attention to anything you're showing me, and do not come back into my dreams again, whoever you are, then I would have never been able to have helped George, and George would certainly have died in, I guess, 1998 or 1997. So, and this is one of the biggest lessons that I had in the beginning about respecting when spirit comes to talk, respecting that it is true, and then also deciding for myself how reality-based what they have to say is, how urgent is the message, and then whether or not to relay it to somebody else. And in many instances, I was asked to, because it just seems sometimes that people would know. They would just send something and know and ask me, do you have anything for me? And I would. So that was just part of the next stage of my own development in this work. So much so that I actually helped a family member with their open heart surgery in New York, and I would go back and forth with my legal pad and pens when they were in the hospital, and their deceased father would come in with more and more information about the person's condition and then what to do about it, even if it meant moving them from one hospital to another. That person is still alive today, and that work went on for a very long time. And she's very, very glad that she's still alive today. And so are her adult children. So what I kept finding out was I go through these particular crises with people, and someone comes in who's very aware of it, who's on the other side, and they have many opinions about it, and oftentimes they're present and they're communicating with me because they are convinced that the person needs perhaps a different doctor, maybe a different test, and perhaps a different form of treatment. Meanwhile, in 2010, George did transition. And as transitions go, it was a very peaceful transition. And he showed up not 5 minutes later. And then he began to show up for 3 or 4 days after he transitioned. Therefore, I don't believe in much of what I've heard about the 3 days after somebody transitions, what happens to them, what they can or cannot do. For myself, people show up even when they literally have just died. And it used to be transparent images of them, and now it's not. They're in their bodies. They're sitting on a chair in my room. It's 4 o'clock that day. And then when I meet their families to do a reading, within 3 days, let's say, their families tell me exactly what time he died, and that the family member had appeared to me and just sat there waiting to have an opportunity to speak to their families through me. So this happens frequently, but it's only this year, in 2025, when I've begun to do this work full time. Until then, it was part of many things that I do. And it's been a very rich and very nourishing experience. We are also completely inundated with death in the world today and through the media. And I have often wondered if there was more real faith on the majority of the population in life after death. I wonder if that would eliminate or at least reduce crime. A lot of people who believe that death is an ending, they have nothing to lose if they want to end their own life or other people's lives. They have nothing to lose. That's their reality. When they cross over, it'll be a whole other story. And the reality they've imparted on others against other people's will is going to be something they're going to be re-experiencing for themselves for their first time during the transition. This interests me very much because when you intentionally are trying to make people suffer over anything, you're the one who's going to be experiencing the suffering. And I'm not suggesting anybody should accept any degree of abuse at all in their lives from anybody. Not at all. But once it's been determined that that is what your experience is, that's when you let go and release. You don't need to bother trying to hurt the other person. If someone steals from you, you don't have to bother trying to hurt them. Trust me. When it matters most, they're going to experience the consequence of those actions. So, in spiritually speaking photography, I wanted to also add that in episode number 1 is many of the spirit photos that George had taken, and many of mine, because in 2013 through 2019, I ended up with George's gift of taking photos, and animals and angels and people and galactic beings appeared in them very clearly. So in episode 1, if you'd like to go back to that episode, you will see, I believe that I had posted 70 of those photos in living color. They're extraordinary, with very fine lines, and I have 3,500 more of them. So when we discuss spiritualism or psychic energy or intuitive abilities or esotericism, this particular stream of photos might interest you, and they're also on the website, spiritually-speaking.org. What I have continually learned is people often see something different than I might see in the photo. And I find that fascinating because the photos tend to appeal to people as individuals. Their individual consciousness, it might have to do with what they're most at ease with. It might have to do with their faith. It might just have to do with their tendency to be in the arts anyway and to be able to clearly see certain symbols in a photo, whereas somebody else can sit there and go, oh, it's this. This is exactly what it is. Or, oh, this is my mother, because actually photos come out of the deceased. And I've done readings for people where I've shown them the photo that came out from light for them, and it was an aunt, one of their aunts, or an uncle. So there's an element to this work that's really fascinating. I don't anticipate it. I don't attempt to do it for that particular reason. I get a feeling in my body, and the feeling says, okay, take a picture of this tree. Take a picture of this leaf that's rustling in the wind on a day in which there's absolutely no wind. What I've learned is that we do not see a lot of what's really out there. We see pretty much what our eyes are trained to see. Many times we see what we're told we can see or cannot see. But I do feel like spirit is much more available to people than they may be used to. So if you happen to pick up a camera to get a certain sensation, to take a certain photo, take a really good look at that photo. You may see something in it that you've not seen before. Because spirit is always appearing through photos for us. They're always appearing. They're always showing up. And right now, especially in these particular times, it's important to spirit to be seen. When people pass away, they don't necessarily like to be considered gone. And certainly they're gone in certain respects for us, of course. We live vicariously through one another, and then somebody dies and we can't do that anymore. As fascinating as the experience of knowing someone who's passed away is while they're communicating with you, and it is fascinating, and it is beautiful, and they can be enormously helpful, it's not the same thing as going out for a cup of coffee together. Nothing really replaces the beauty of friendship, or the beauty of family, or the beauty of your coworker, when they pass. It's one of the saddest things to reconcile in life. And I do believe that grief and unresolved grief is responsible for many physical illnesses in one's body and in one's mind. So I kept taking the photos. I continue to see light. I've been writing a great deal about it. And I find that the work is incredibly nourishing. And I love to encourage people to not force yourself into a state of grief that is horribly painful for you, because your loved ones stay right with you in this dimension. So if you pray or you meditate, you can ask them to make themselves more visible to you. You can have a wish list about what you'd like to see that they can show you. There's a synchronicity regarding events when they start to make themselves more visible to you. Part of what's important to them is that you give them a little room, give them a little leeway, give them a little belief that, okay, you can be here on this plane of consciousness with me. Yes, you can. That must be why the bottle of perfume you gave me for my birthday last year just turned over and fell on my dresser. That could be why one of the family members happened to give me a picture of you that I've never seen before this week. That meant so much to me that it just made me start crying. There's a serendipity in spirit communication. There is different ways in which people who have passed away do become present in our lives, but we all have free will, and you can always send them away. You can. You absolutely can do that. So if that's something, a gift that you tend to have, that you're dissatisfied with, that you're not sure you want to continue to have, you should call a psychic and discuss it with them and get whatever helpful tools there may be to release yourself from that relationship, because it's really up to you. You are the decision maker. In my life, once I saw the ways in which people benefited from Paul's influence and knowledge and love, and how satisfied they were with outcomes, that encouraged me to continually accept my gift and the photography and do something with it and trust it and enjoy it and appreciate the mystery that it really is, and that it is a catalyst for healing. So this particular show today, episode 13, is about psychic circles, in the sense that we're all interconnected. We're all deep people. Everybody is a complicated person. Everybody experiences tragedy of some kind. We all experience loss. There's no right time or wrong time for a person to leave their body. It has to do with their soul's development. One of the sadder parts of being incarnate is when people very young go, children of any age. It's impossible to reconcile the pain. We see it every day on the air, also in the news, and we see starvation. We witness bombs being thrown. We witness horrendous crimes. At some point, my own opinion is around 2026 to 28, there's going to be a radical change in the consciousness of humanity regarding violence and regarding war. We're going through it now. We're going through it. But life is cyclical, and what is happening right now also is. So you want to put your best light out there. We all have a light. We all come from another part of the universe. We all have a very particular light. And one thing that my work has taught me is to shine the light. Shine it. When I'm with people, sometimes I see their light so brightly that I honestly can't see their faces when we're talking. And I'll say, you have to excuse me, but all I can see is your light. And it is kind of funny and it is kind of weird, but it's also very true. And then gradually as we talk or as I do a reading, I start to see, again, their features, and I start to see who they are in this incarnation. We're all eternal, and when we do move back into the part of the universe where we've come from, our light will be shining somewhere else. And this is the way in which the universe really functions. So regarding psychic circles, if we can be a catalyst for change for others, that is helpful, that is nurturing, and that is honest, good for us. If we can receive that from others, good for us. Speaking of which, I'm going to thank Theresa and Diane, Theresa and Sarah, and I'm also going to thank Amara, because they've been persistently showing me their light and receiving my light. These last few months, when in my own life there have been other changes to go through and processes to adapt to. And having that kind of access to their light and they to mine has been enormously helpful and beneficial. So we're going to keep that up. Many people think that being psychic is some kind of a intuitive, I don't know, something aesthetic or intuitive, but not necessarily very intelligent. I find it's the exact opposite. Many women I know have always been extremely, profoundly intuitive, and it does translate into an absolute intelligence that gets to be identified and applied in their lives. If we experience a certain kind of trauma, we need to reassess the impact of that trauma. We need to download it. Sometimes life helps us do that. Sometimes life takes you and kind of picks you up and puts you somewhere else and goes, okay, now's the time. Now's the time to figure this out. Now's the time to assimilate this particular trauma. Now's the time to integrate it. Now's the time to be free. Now's the time to release it. Because we, the universe, or we, spirit, have something in store for you that's better. Something in store for you that's going to help free you up. And that's the plan. That's part of the plan. Many times we hear people speak of having a sacred contract, and no matter how horrifying their story may be, oftentimes people say to me, well, I guess I signed up for this, huh? But in truth, I'm not convinced that we did. Personally, I'm not. I think we all try to rationalize extreme pain and suffering or heartache and loss. It's natural to try to do that. I think the sacred contract part could be absolutely true, but I think that when you're suffering, I don't find it particularly comforting. I don't myself, because I consider it another form of victimization. Because why would you sign up for something you want nothing to do with once you're here, right? So I always encourage people when they're in cycles of pain to, if that belief helps you, fine. If it's not helping you, then I would say, no, I don't think you signed up for this at all. not at all. And then figure out how else you can reconcile yourself with what you're undergoing, so you can free yourself of remaining attached if you no longer have to be attached, and also that you needn't be suffering over your suffering. The point of suffering is to kind of learn to accept it. Don't be in denial, because then you're going to return to the same dilemmas again and again and again because it hasn't been worked through. So let's say you work it through. You're satisfied with the results. You're feeling a little better. Then you can let go and release something about it. And then you are no longer suffering over your suffering. I have found that people many times have tried to remain attached to a loved one in their families by proving that they're going to hold on to the pain and suffering of the family system, which they were not responsible for to begin with, and that is some form of loyalty, some act of love. And to that I say, well, to each his own. If that gives you some form of pleasure, if it inspires you, then that may be right for you. If it doesn't, then it can be wrong for you. So you needn't remain attached, but you can still treasure certain memories. You certainly can still love and be loved. But hopefully you want to kind of create a system for yourself that continues to nourish you and protect you and help you through your developmental phases to give you more satisfaction and more positive self-esteem. And that's what I recommend to people when they're really stuck, to go for the positive self-esteem. Think about it. When did someone say something to you that so wounded you that you're attached to the wound? I find that in psychic readings, wounds really get healed. They get tapped into and they get healed. And that everybody deserves to be free. So I especially appreciate and respect people who have come to me because they've been looking for a certain kind of comfort zone and a certain kind of freedom. And when we get stuck and we can't experience that in our circle for whatever reason, it is wisest to go see somebody who's a psychic, because many times they'll have access to different kinds of information and experience that can help you cultivate a stronger, more positive understanding of the reality you're living in at the time. I'm going to close the show now. I hadn't intended for it to be particularly long, and I think it's adequate. And it introduces you into psychic circles because we're always kind of involved and engaged in one another's life. Always. We always have decisions that we can make about one another's life. We can enhance a person's life, or we can destroy them. We can uplift them, or we can depress them. We can teach them, or try to control them. These are our choices. Human beings are amazing. Billie Jean King, the tennis player, had said, human beings are nothing if not adaptable. She's right. We adapt to so much in a lifetime. We give so much of ourselves in a lifetime. Receive and we respect the exchanges of values we experience along the way. And that's a beautiful thing. In the essence of transformation, the purpose of my program is to encourage growth, to encourage reflection, to encourage introspection, to encourage enlightenment. So I hope that today, the essence of transformation, the first episode regarding psychic circles, but the 13th episode of the entire series, has been a real joy to record today. I want to thank you for joining the podcast. The number is 413-282-8538. Should you want to leave a message or contact the Essence of Transformation for any reason. And I hope that you have a very beautiful day full of wonderful surprises, dreams coming true, healings you may never have dreamed or figured were possible, an abundance of love, care, and respect. Thank you so much for watching.